Presently, well, I just spent the last 15 years as Dean of Students at Strathaven. They retired the position, so they retired me, and which is great on my part because I never would quit. And now I spend time walking my German Shepherd. And I live over in Chester Township right nearby, so I might walk right here sometime.
My name is Andrew Gordon. I coached, I think, sometime from 17 until 2019. I'm currently the Associate Dean of Students at Cairn University, and yeah, I live in the northeast part of Philadelphia with my wife Karen and our son Ezra.
Haseltine, coached 95 till 02, around there. And I'm still live in Brookhaven, and I'm the athletic director here and coach phys ed, or teach phys ed and coach when I can't find a coach.
Brian Dennstaedt, I coached from 06 to 2016, and I am currently teaching high school math down in Annapolis at Annapolis Area Christian School and coaching soccer there as well.
This is for Mark and Rod, the eldest on the family here. What is the biggest difference between the way soccer was played when you were coaching versus how it's played today?
Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm not sure if it's biggest, but I would say just even the positioning. Like we had sweepers back then, and no one plays with the sweeper anymore. And they were fullbacks and halfbacks and forwards, not the center backs and all that. I would say actually, it's for the most part the soccer skill has gotten so much better. We had a few kids that played a lot, and but now everyone plays quite a bit. I shouldn't say obviously everyone, but I would say the skill level has definitely gone up from in general soccer guys. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely it's still up. And the reason for that is there's so much more emphasis on soccer now. Back when I was coaching, oh, you play high school, so that's nice. Community teams, we talk about. What do you mean? Professional teams? What do you mean? So all of that has begun to grow and to come up to the skill level is so much different. I think one thing I'm a little disappointed in now that we used to have, and that was if you give up the ball, get it back. Nowadays you see you give up the ball and the guy just stands there and says, oh well, I didn't get it. I'm sorry, that drives me nuts. That just drives me nuts. And one thing that we really believed in is if you're not running to position or pre-position for something, you're wrong. Get moving. You're part of the game even when you're on the weak side, you're part of the game. And that's something I miss now, especially if I watch pro sports. The way they stand and the guy absolutely in striking position, there's a ball guy right next to him. And he just lets him go and he goes on. And lets him go, that drives me nuts. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. This one's for Doc and Brian. Between fitness, experience, athleticism, skill, and tactical unity, which is the most important trait for a soccer team to have, and which of those traits is easiest to develop?
Okay. I think you probably make an argument for all of them in some one way or another, but when I hear those, I would think of skill as the most important, because I would look at it from the angle of it starts with the basics. And skill sounds like, well, incredible things that you can do. I wouldn't look at skill that way. I would look at skill as the basics. You pass the ball, can you trap the ball, can you strike the ball? If you can do these basics, then things like strategy and so forth, and even athleticism, are available to you. But if you can't do these basics, if you don't have skill, then all the other ones don't matter. So like today, for example, with my incredible athleticism, all my skill, I noticed, I found out today after not playing for 2.5 years, is gone. And so I couldn't take advantage of all my incredible athleticism. And so that's just an example for you. What was the other one? And what was,
There's 5 of them.
no, but what was the next one? The most-
Which of those traits is easiest to develop?
Oh, easiest to develop. Oh, that's easy. Easiest to develop is fitness. And the reason why is because you can threaten kids. So that's why. So that's the easiest to develop because we could just threaten them. We'll do extended, write you up. We'll make you run sprints. We'll make whatever. You don't get to start. So with the threats, people get in shape. So that would be the easiest. Not the easiest for the players.
No.
The easiest for the coach.
I'll look at it from a player's perspective. I think I would agree with Doc in saying that, fellas, the skill level is probably the most significant, right? If you can't connect a pass to your teammate, then you're probably not going to be talking about how you're going to play a particular formation or play a particular system, right? And that, as a player, will come down to really your own desire to want to become a better player, right? So it's the most significant, I think the most important thing to develop as a young player in high school is your skill. And so it's a question I'd say is like, what are you doing to develop that skill currently? And then the other thing I'd agree with Doc too is the easiest thing for you as the player to develop is your fitness level, right? You can go out and you can train, you can run. That doesn't require a whole lot of skill, but that does require some commitment and some discipline on your part, which is hard sometimes if you're not a disciplined player. But also, as you probably saw on the field today, there were some that were gassed fairly early, and it became pretty evident that was the place that you wanted to go attack, right? And so if you are the player that is the fittest on the field, thank you, Jesse, for playing goal in the second half, by the way. I appreciate you doing that. Then you're going to find it to be a lot easier as the game progresses to take advantage of the teams that are not as fit, right? And so I've coached several teams where we may not have had the greatest of skill, but we were really fit, and then when it came down to the end of the game, we were still running like we were at the beginning of the game. And that is a significant advantage to a player. So I hope that answers that question. Eric? Yes, I'm afraid to.
Oh, no.
What do you do from a coach's point of view when you have a troublesome player, someone who doesn't really buy into the system?
That's a great question. Is that for me or is that for somebody else, Eric?
Kind of, how do you guys deal with it?
I was going to say, is that a personal question, Eric? Yeah. Well, I guess it depends also on the personnel, right? I mean, if you have a robust team and a lot of players, then it's really easy to say, we've got lots of guys that are willing to do the work, and you're not fitting into our culture. If there's not a lot of players, and that player is a necessary component, then that becomes a little bit trickier. I think there's not a formula for that kind of a player. It's relationships, right? And I think you know that, Eric, and you've had a really great relationship with your coaches, where if they, Mr. Hayes came up to you and said, these are some things that I need out of you differently, you would respond to that in a very positive way because of the relationship that was developed from the coach to the player. And I think that's an important aspect. If there's no relationship, or if the coach, and I learned this in my years of growing up as a coach, as a young coach to an older coach, was how the players respond to the way I'm moving, right? My early tactics where I'm going to get in their face and yell at them and scream at them, and they're going to run because I told them to, and then it changed a little bit. I realized that wasn't going to be effective, right? In terms of just building relationships. And Eric, you know that. I think I've yelled at you a few times.
A few times.
I don't even think I was your coach. I think I was just yelling at you.
I deserved it, though.
Probably hurt, yeah. So I dominated that question myself. I apologize for that.
Could I give an answer to that? I think one of the main things is get to know your players and encouragement. It's not always punishment. Sometimes encouragement to tell a player how good you think they are, how important they are to the team, and how crucial it is for them to join in and do their part of it because they are so crucial. When I was coaching a team over at Strathaven, and I had 2 girls that were absolutely fantastic soccer players, both played up front. And for some reason, they weren't getting along well. So after a game, I got them both together in the middle of the field and said, come here, I want to talk to you. What's the matter? Talk to this one. Talk to this one. I said, you hear what she's saying? This is what she needs out of you. And do you hear what she said? This is what she needs out of you. We went on with those two girls and won a state championship, and they both came out with the exact same number of points and assists, goals and assists. But it was a case of talking to them like human beings and treat them with respect and telling them how important it is, so that they began to believe that.
All right, question. This is for Andrew and Ben. Who is the best player in the world right now, and who will win the World Cup?
Joel Embiid is the best player in the world. Yeah, that's right, yeah. No, I mean, I think consideration has to be given to somebody like Holland, who's like 19. He's doing incredible stuff. I'm a big fan of Mo Salah. I think he's also could be considered for that. I think the most talented player in the world is De Bruyne. I think he's strictly the most talented player on the world stage right now. But Mo Salah, Lewandowski, Holland, those guys should all be considered for probably the best player in the world. But I think that means that the Messi and the Ronaldos of the world, they've moved into the LeBron phase of their career. They were the best. They will continue to be, considered amongst the best, but they're not the actual best players out there right now.
World Cup winner?
I have the French repeating. Not that I want that, but that's happening.
I think Messi won the Ballon d'Or 4 or 5 months ago, and I think this coming season will be the first in over a decade where there aren't two clear choices in Messi and Ronaldo. So I'm just thankful to have the privilege to watch those guys play for the last 15 years on TV, and the privilege to watch what they've done in the game. I think that's a tough call who's the best player currently in the world, but I would look at what's the top league in the world. I think Premier League has resurrected back to that top level. There's two clear teams that are dominating that league right now, Liverpool and Man City. And I look at who's the leading assist, who has the most assists in the Premier League right now. Mohamed Salah. Who has the most goals? Mohamed Salah. So I would have to, from a statistical standpoint, say right now he's the top player in the world for me. World Cup wise, there is one team that has gone unbeaten in 31 games qualifying, who also has the GOAT on their team who has yet to win the World Cup. This is his last World Cup, so I would say that my pick would be, the emotional pick would be Messi puts it together for a few short weeks in Qatar in November and walks away as the greatest player of all time.
Really great. This is for everyone, but maybe if everyone takes a couple minutes or maybe just 1 minute to say what single moment on the field sticks out most in your memory, or is your favorite from coaching TCA, and then what single moment off the field?
What was the last
Go
part
left
of
to
that?
right. Single moment on the field, single moment off the field.
Memory. So for me, it would be when we were in 04 and 05, it was a little bit of a struggle. What we would actually be known to come down into the cafeteria some days and we called it the Scott, what was that guy's name? Makuta. Scott Makuta event. We would actually recruit and negotiate with people to get people to play that game that day because we didn't have enough players. So Mr. D and I, we started becoming like people that were gonna really well up our faith, and we were gonna well up our faith and believe that we were gonna get international players. So we talked to Mr. Eklund and different ones, start recruiting people. So we were expecting to have like a Brazilian. We were thinking a Brazilian was going to come in, but actually we ended up getting 2 Nigerians. Now it was Chidozie DK. What was the other guy? What was it? Collins. So these 2 guys come from Nigeria. It's very interesting too because they were from opposing tribes. Literally, serious issue. Lua and Yoruba, which sometimes, anyway, they were fine with each other. And they literally came from Nigeria. And they said they played soccer. So we were like, this is it. We're taking the championship this year. So they come out to practice the first day, no lie. They come out to practice the first day. We're so excited. All right, what are these guys going to be able to do? They're bare feet, which didn't surprise me. Having been a missionary in these kinds of places, that's actually what I then almost expected. Bare feet. They're going to just play in bare feet. So I sent them in to Mr. Hayes' Magic Mary Poppins. I don't know how he does this. He's got cleats for everybody, all for the last 20 years. Anyway, so that was my favorite memory on the field. Is I still can picture those two guys sitting in the bleachers getting ready for practice, and they have no cleats. My favorite memory off the field was one of those years we won the coveted sportsmanship award, which is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sportsmanship award. You should be thankful, and especially as a Christian school, you should be very proud that you won the sportsmanship award. But as Josh and I were talking about, it was like almost like, okay, thanks. But anyway, it was a great award. They let us go to this dinner, so they had this dinner, and I took the captains at the time, who were Josh Bean and Dan Williams, and we went to this dinner. It was really nice. It was there, and they had beautiful setup and everything, and they had a guest speaker, or the keynote speaker. And so the keynote speaker gets up. He was a referee, because it was a referees association, and he starts speaking. Title of his speech: The History of the Whistle. No lie. The history. He went on for almost 45 minutes on the history of the whistle. He went all the way back to the Dark Ages, into the Renaissance. He came through. It was unbelievable. He told you. Anyway, it was good for a nice ride home. We had a lot to talk about. That's it.
I would say I'm going to combine it into one story, on and off the pitch. If you guys remember back to the dark days, early 2020, the pandemic hit, PIAA had shut down all high school sports. Rod needed a coach that season. My son was a senior, so I volunteered to coach, even though I didn't necessarily have the time to do it. But that August, as preseason was coming up, we weren't sure if we were playing. PIAA had not taken a stance on whether or not they were going to allow high school athletics to take place this fall. And they kept going back and forth with the leagues. I think throwing it back on local leagues to make decisions, the local school districts were voting. And you guys should be proud of Mr. Hayes and TCA, because they led on that decision to play. And the Pioneer Athletic Conference, it was the first conference in the entire region to say we're going to play high school sports this fall. We think we can do it. So I remember the first game we had was up at Devon Prep. We got on the bus. We're all wearing masks. We're driving up the Blue Route. I'm looking out the window, and everyone's staring at us because kids weren't supposed to be on school buses. This was August 30th, something like that, late in the month. And we get there, Devon Prep. We're getting off the bus, and there's all this local media there, cameras. The local sports writer was there, and we play the game. We win 3-1 with a roster of 12 guys, because a number of students had chosen not to return to TCA because of the concerns about COVID. And Colton, you remember, I think Caleb scored twice, Evan scored on a pen. Next day, back page of Delco Times, the picture of Caleb and Evan running up the field celebrating a goal, and the title was "Sports is Back." Wow. And the article was not necessarily a game report or a match report. It was celebrating the fact that kids were back on the field, pursuing athletics and doing it in an awesome way. And at that time, the larger public school districts had not made a decision whether they were going to play fall sports. And within a week and a half, I know for a fact up at Pencrest where we live, there was significant pressure on the athletic directors to allow the kids to play, because they looked at PCA and the other small schools who led by example to get the kids back on the sports field. So for me, both on and off the field, that was probably a special day and a memory that I'll be for a long time.
Well, keep mine simple. My worst time is any loss. Any loss. I hate to lose. So anytime we had a loss, it was my fault. And back to the drawing board. What are you laughing at? He knows darn well. We're not allowed to do so. And my high moment was having the privilege, and I won't go into details of how I ended up in that position, but having the privilege of leading the Strathaven girls to a state championship back in '97. And even at the time, I looked at it and I said, Lord, that was your doing, not mine. So that was a high point.
There's a lot to choose from in terms of on-field moments that were really memorable. Guys were sharing earlier about a time when we were playing DC, and we had a player, his name was Levi, who he got occasional minutes now and again, and we told him to throw up a service to put one in the box and say Kodama service. He ended up putting it in the right panel and scoring. I think it was the equalizer, or maybe even the go-ahead goal at some point. Moments like that stick out that are memorable. Players scoring their first goal, things like that. I remember playing against Faith Christian in a late season, regular season match, and it was pouring, and it was like the worst day to play soccer of all time. There was no lightning, so we played on. Things like that stick out in my memory. Going to the district final, things like that. Off the field, though, it was definitely good, having the privilege to go to TCA retreats and then be alongside of players and guys and getting the chance just to be with them in an off-the-field context, getting to study the Bible with them, worship with them, spend time in discussion with them, and then just, be playing, like all the different games we played at retreats. Those are the best times that I have off the field with guys. Going to Bob Jones, things like that. Those are memories that I have with guys that are really positive.
Yeah, I'll go on field first. It had been a while since we had beaten DC. I think I went back like 15 years or something like that. There are several ties in there, and we had a decent team this year. And the first time we played them, we were up 2-1. They came back and ended us beating us 3-2. And then the second game, same scenario, 2-1. They came back and tied at 2-2, and it's coming down to the end. And I just remember Steve Krause putting one in right across the goal. Everyone's just going crazy, and it's just a great moment right there. A lot of fun. I would say off the field was great. I loved just being with the boys and building those relationships. But I think one of the funniest times was how many of you have been up to the other field, the other campus we used to play up there. Is basically beautiful field, the soccer fields, and then there's woods all around, but there's fence on one side. And so we had them do the mile, just whatever. So I had flags at each corner. We're down here working on a drill on the field, and I look up and I see this kid, probably young teenager, climb over the fence, and I'm just watching him. As the guys are working, they don't even see him. And he grabs our flag and starts running with it. And I was like, guys, look. And they all turned, and all I said was, get him! And the whole crowd, this kid sees these like 15 guys just staring at him. And I don't know if you guys don't know Frank Halter, but Frank Halter was this big, scary guy. Was not a runner. Fastest I've ever seen Frank run in my life. He got there first. The kid jumped the fence, Frank jumped the fence. I think one bounce. It was ridiculous. And they all just charged him. They grabbed him. They brought him back, They didn't hurt him. But it was the funniest thing. And I don't know, just a great moment there. A team bonding moment. That's for sure.
Gave the kid $20 later on.
Yeah. No, I actually, the funny part is I said, show me what's going on here. And we went back to his fort. He had a bunch of TCA stuff. He had hurdles. He had a bunch of flags, cones, all back in his fort back there. So I took him to his house, talked to his mom. It was pretty fun. Collected all the stuff that he had.
Poor guy.
I know. Picked the wrong time.
Worked months for that, I'm sure. So it's really difficult. I coached with 10, 11 years to pick a single moment or things like that. One of the things that stands out to me about the years that I coached and felt this is important to hear too for you is you're developing, as I heard a lot of your names and what year you were, a lot of you guys were freshmen, right? And you're building into this new season here at TCA, so ACS is where I'm teaching out. But The commitment that the players on my team had to show up on Saturday mornings to play soccer was sort of astounding. I think, you know, we played 9 to 11 or 10 to 12, and I know most high school kids at 9 o'clock on a Saturday would prefer to be asleep, and that was sort of, we wanted to get in before the basketball teams had their practices on, you know, during the winter, and then we still continued it in the spring, and the commitment from the guys to be there, you know, week in and week out, and there was no pressure to come, they just wanted to be there. And I think for you as players, the coach gives you an opportunity and has an event to do it, show up, be there, because what that enabled the boys to do over a period of time was to develop sort of a unity, a cohesiveness, a bonded together, because they were doing something that other teams were not doing at that time, and that was playing outside of the fall season. And that helped really transition TCA soccer in a lot of ways to being very competitive with a lot of the teams that we were playing. It sort of culminated in one season where we didn't lose a game that year, but we were close to losing a lot of games. And there was one game in particular, the game that Mr. Haseltine Britt injured himself, and he was done. It was a shoulder, collarbone, early in the game, and he was out. He'd scored in that game, thankfully. We were up 1-0, and then Evan Nees, who was one of our other better players in that season, he went out with an ankle injury, and so it was at Gloucester Christian, a school that had pretty much dominated the league that we were in for years. And the team that we had on the pitch was not the best team because the two best players, and no offense to a lot of players in the history of the sport. I mean, I'm only a coach for here for 10 years, so I'm sure that there might be others that were better than Britt and Evan, but I would be hard pressed to find some that were better than those two here at the school. But they were gone. They weren't on the field. It was the other guys that stepped up and played a remarkable game, and we ended up winning 1-0. And so that was the final game of the regular season. We went into the playoffs, and then last year, the year before that, we were undefeated and we lost in the first round, and then we ended up playing the same team that beat us in the semifinals the year before. Again, the boys fought hard and won, and then ended up going into the finals that year, and we were down 3-0 to Gloucester Christian at halftime, and we ended up coming back to win that game 4-3. And so that was kind of, I mean, that was all within a stretch of like a week, right? It was a pretty remarkable experience, but those things would not have happened had it not been for the younger guys stepping in and wanting to be better. Does that make sense? Boys, like, they wanted to be better, and they were there on Saturday mornings. Like, they were there in the off-season training. And that championship season had a significant, Britt and Evan played a significant role. As I told the guys at the beginning of the season, I was like, listen, all we need is two guys to play the piano, but we need the rest of you guys to carry the piano to the venue, right? And that's what they did. But then when those two guys weren't around, they were ready, and they stepped in. And so when I was watching you guys play today, I thought, that's really unique. You guys are here playing, and you're young, and you look good out there. And that's exciting for Coach to see that. So again, opportunities that come up when Coach says, hey, we're gonna get together and play. Not just you saying, I'll be there, but you saying, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna bring 3 of my friends and make sure they're there too, you know? Because if it wasn't for those moments in the off season, we would not have experienced that kind of jubilation and celebration at the end of that particular season.
Awesome. And kind of keeping with the player mentality there, next question, and this is open for anyone to answer, maybe 2 or 3 answers. As a player, how do I root my soccer actions in my faith?
I think, you know, what are you motivated by? You know, it's great to be motivated by trying to be the best, or trying to play for your team, or whatever, your friends. But I think the best motivation is God has given you life, let alone soccer ability. You play to honor and glorify Him. That as a thank you. And so I think soccer is just part of your faith. You know, your faith encompasses everything, and soccer is just one aspect that you can demonstrate your love for Jesus and His thankfulness.
I would agree with Rod. I think 2 things that I think of. One is discipline. The discipline, like people have said earlier, to be in shape, to do fitness, to be ready to play the game, to work on your skill, to become a better player. That same discipline, that same mental discipline is the one that I think combined with the right motivation, that's what turns you back to the Lord, and it's what you can keep being rejuvenated day after day if you're disciplined enough to stay in His presence and to stay in the Word and in constant prayer. That's one thing. And then the second thing is being in community with other people. Being on a team like you're on a team right now and striving next to other guys towards a common goal. Whether that starts today in the off season, whether that starts in August with preseason or throughout the season, like there's few circumstances where you're gonna sweat and bleed and struggle and win next to people like that going forward. But it does teach you a lot of lessons about what it means to work together and cooperate with people, to be in a family with somebody, to potentially lead a family, to potentially be a part of a local church and be participating in that and work with other people in a way that is helping that to grow and be part of the kingdom of God in a positive way. So I think that those two things, being in community and on a team with other guys and being disciplined, that's kind of internal and external to your faith, ways that soccer action and participation can kind of show up in that faith aspect of your life.
Yeah, I think, guys, as I've raised my three kids who are 19, 17, and 15, and even coaching at the club level, and especially here where I can be more open and with my faith, we shouldn't be here. We're dead in our trespasses. And Ephesians 8 says, "But God, who through His grace and mercy freely has given us all things." And I take that as, use the gifts that you've been given to glorify Him in everything that you do. Whether it's on the soccer field, whether it's in your future profession, whether it's academically in school. Be thankful for what you have. Be thankful for that every day you get a chance to go out and compete. And do it in a way that's honoring to God. That doesn't mean we can't go out and get nasty on the field and compete as hard as we possibly can. But it means using the gifts that you've been given and not wasting them. And I think as men, we have a propensity towards passivity in our life, in all things. It's a lot easier for me to go home and sit on the couch, watch sports all day. It's harder for me to get up, be a good dad, interact with my girls, be a good husband. And that applies on the soccer field and in life. Don't be passive with the gifts you've been given. Use them for His glory, and use them in a way that you can walk off the field at the end of your high school career and be proud of what you've accomplished.
For perhaps the alumni here, how do you determine which of your responsibilities in life, you mentioned being a father and being a husband, have priority? How do you prioritize those responsibilities? Yeah. Yep.
No. I'll just say something real quick. Matthew 6:33, called the theory of relativity. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything else will be added unto you. So, in the context of that passage, the word first is correct. It's a correct translation. It's first, but it really could easily be translated only. So for you, in terms of as you're getting older and you're going to come into different things in your life, job, career, being a parent, being a husband, being a wife, I think one of the things to try to understand about this kingdom of God, this rule of God, is that it's not like this. It's not like pecking order. It's not like God first, then different people have different opinions, right, on this. Is it, okay, family second, then job, then country, or whatever, different things. That totem pole kind of mentality is really, I think, not a correct translation of Matthew 6:33. It's more like this. And this is the kingdom of God, and then everything else comes out of that. So you don't prioritize, you don't have to feel like, well, I'm prioritizing my family over God. You prioritize God only, and out of that life comes your family, and comes the right way of living with your family, being a husband, being a father, being someone who does good work, and so I don't know if that makes sense, but I think there's something to that issue of not a totem pole prioritizing, but a looking at God wholly, and therefore I look at myself as a husband this way because of the way I look at God.
What you said.
Good answer. Yeah. I have one more question, but I wanted to open it up to the audience here. If anyone would like to ask anything, feel free.
I have a question. For those of you that played, whether it was high school, college, or both, afterwards, and after you were done playing, how did you kind of adjust to not playing? It's like, it was a big part of your life before.
Coach,
Start coaching, buddy.
Might be good for
they
him.
make you play.
I'm back and play PCA on Saturdays.
I have a question. What was your guys' like biggest role when you played high school soccer?
Say it again.
What was your guys' like biggest role when you played high school soccer?
Biggest role?
Yeah. Like, what was your main job on the team? Like, to help your team win, be better.
It's all dependent upon what year I was, right? So as a younger player, I was dependent upon older players to lead, maybe verbally, or they were the captains. But felt like I'll do whatever it took to help the team win, right? So whatever the coach asked me to do, I figured he knew what was best because he saw the bigger picture of the team. That's what I was going to do. And then I took what would be my responsibility, a personal responsibility, to make sure that I was well prepared for the game, whatever that meant. And then preparing to practice, making myself the best player that I could be, so that then when the time came for me to actually perform, I was ready to do that. And I didn't always do that perfectly, but I would encourage you, particularly younger players, as you're considering that, it's like, what do you do personally to make yourself the best soccer player you could be, mentally and physically, right? So doesn't mean just playing the game, I mean watching the game, are you studying the game as well? And I felt like personally that was my role, is whatever the coach asked me to do, and I just needed to make sure that I was ready to do those things.
How has sport affected your faith?
For me, I know how that they have that saying, sports builds character. I'm not sure if that's really true. I think it's more that sports reveals your character than anything else. But I had wonderful coaches that were wonderful examples, and that really built into my life. So that was huge in that, learning how to be a man for other people other than my father, that and be a Christ honoring man. So I think that was a big thing that you had to be respected because of the sports, and then they build into your life that way.
I was going to ask you, Mark, who your favorite player was. We already knew that answer.
Anybody other than Mike Ingham.
You guys could change one thing that you did when you were coaching that you remember and you go, I wish I would have done that differently. Is there anything that stands out?
I'm might not have put Jason at goalie. Every time I put him in this for 5 minutes, so he'd score. So, you know.
That's a great question, Aaron. I mean, I think these guys probably think of 1,000 different things that they would have done differently if they had to think through it. Really, given a lot of time. Personally, I would say I thought I did a great job of developing relationships with my players, but also as I think about it, man, could have done a much better job of developing relationships with my players. Right. At the same time, thought it was good, but also thought it could have been much better.
I think Eric, similar to Brian, it's coaching is about my mentorship and even discipleship, especially in an environment here at TCA. I've coached for over 15 years at the club level, and I just spent one season a year. But it's you think back to the interactions you've had with players, where based on who they are as individuals, maybe could have approached it slightly different. I can think of a handful of those where, you know what, I should have approached that young man a little slightly different to get a better response from them. And that's the hard thing, because you have this group of kids, especially at high school level. Club level, I'm picking every player I want on the team. High school, you're getting what you get based on who's here at the school, and it's a real mix of background, not just in the game but outside of the game, and managing the emotions of that competitive spirit that's there, especially in game, where the player's frustrated, and how do you approach that player versus another player. And each kid, you want to approach differently to get the most out of it. So it's a lot of effort, like Brian was saying, building relationships with the guys, knowing who you're working with, knowing that their background, where they're coming from, and then trying to manage that throughout the course of the season during a hard and challenging time. It's not easy. Not easy.
Two quick questions. One very quick question. Now that you're where you are, looking back, is it more rewarding to play or to coach? And the second thing would be, I've learned that as I've grown through the years and become different in different roles, being a student, being a dad, being a husband, that I've learned more about myself, that God has shown me and revealed things about himself to me through my role, right? So like as a dad, I'll repeat it for you. But it's like as a dad, now I can see a little bit more about how God has been patient with me and really his forgiveness and grace. It's like I get it so much better now than I did before. And so the first question is, more rewarding as a player or as a coach? And then as coaches, has that revealed anything? Has God revealed himself to you in a new way as a coach? Or do you see yourself in a new way with respect to him having been a coach?
That's a great question. I never thought of that before. It's kind of crazy to me to think about that now, that I never thought about that before. The coach or player. I think it's more, for me, I think it's more rewarding to be a coach. Yeah. I never thought about it like that. It's a good question.
I think, I mean, for me, it's coaching. You spend, I did the math once, and over the course of a full season, fall through, summer, fall through spring, you're spending 300 plus hours a year with these guys. And from a mentorship and discipleship standpoint, that's a ton of time. That's more time you spend with guys than anyone else in their life except for the parents. That's more than a teacher that they're in the class with for an hour a day. But it's a significant position of leadership, which is humbling, especially as you're working with high school age guys who are coming into manhood. And you're part of my story. I played for a total jerk in high school. almost quit because I just didn't want to play.
Wasn't one of these guys.
No, it wasn't one of these guys, no. No. But he's in the PA Soccer Hall of Fame. And that had a big impact on me as I got into coaching when my son started playing. And it was, first it was just, I want to help my son learn the game and enjoy the game that I love. And then it became a much broader calling, I think. It's kind of how I look back on it now.
I just gotta add something, because now you got me thinking about this, because I never thought about that
My
before.
bad.
It's a great question. I'm thinking like, why? Okay, I'm picturing myself, a player, high school, college, you know, the camaraderie is incredible. And you love your brothers. But I think for me, maybe that's the key word, is brothers. But in, you know, your coaching, especially after you become a parent, and I would just encourage you guys in this extra answer, you know, Jesse, you know, it is going to come to an end at some point, you know, as far as your playing career at a college level. But you'll always keep playing. Who knows? Maybe who knows where you go? But what can just begin is coaching, like they said, and then you're gonna be married, you're gonna have children, and then you're not just a brother. You know, that experience in high school and college with you feel fulfilled. Like I think back to my career at Delaware, you know, you feel fulfilled because you're in this together. And you know, when we do good, yeah, you feel good yourself, but right, you feel good for that buddy, that guy, you feel so good for that. Well, when you're coaching, you're not a brother, you're a dad. And it's my experience in life. I love my sister and everything, but my kids, they're everything. So it's like I'm much more fulfilled with my kids. I don't know, I want to say it this way because everybody else, then you can't say player. I don't mean it like that, because it could be reasons that way too. But for me, I think about it, it's like that feeling of being like a dad as a coach, as opposed to a brother, as a player, was a little bit more fulfilling.
Yeah, it's kind of a cop-out, but like your experience and your fulfillment you have as a player enriches that as a coach. And like all the experiences I had, playing under amazing coaches, having success in different programs, on different teams, like whatever, that all was then, it magnified any of the fulfillment I had as a coach then, because it was just in myself as a player. But you see it in 21 or 22 guys, and you watch the camaraderie, you watch the team coming together, that unity, or like them striving towards a common goal and maybe succeeding in many different ways. Like you're seeing that joy and fulfillment happening to 20 guys, and it's like, and that doesn't even account for any of the discipleship, the mentorship stuff along the way. It feels to me like it pales in comparison. Like the coaching aspect of that was more fulfilling even than as a player. But without it, it wouldn't have been quite the same. You couldn't have stepped in and coached without it. So you kind of need one to have the other, but that's how I feel about it.
Easier to be a player, way easier. But I would also say it's more fulfilling to be a coach because you have that camaraderie, not camaraderie, but you're actually getting your message across to these guys, and they actually do it properly. It's just, that's very rewarding. And I would say that my role as a coach really taught me that I don't have all the answers. You know, we lost that game. Why'd you lose that game? I wish I knew. You know, or sometimes you know, there's different things, but yeah, and then as a parent, you're not going to know every answer. A lot of things with women. Been married for 30 some years. I still scratching the surface on that one. So good luck, boys. And no, I'm not kidding about that. But yeah, so it's definitely you don't have the answers, and but you know God, He does.
Awesome. I kind of figured that would be the consensus, just from hearing you guys talk about your team and your experiences, and I guess I was sort of asking the question too for Jeff and for these kids, because you know, a lot of times it's like, oh well, what do you do when you can't play anymore? And it sounds like it's such a loss, right? And of course, the answer, which was kind of a half joke, but half true, it's like, oh, well, then you coach, right? But it sounds like a step down, but what all you guys just said is that it's really a step up. Is that it opens your mind and you see things differently with perspective, and you have that opportunity to mentor, and you have that opportunity to really have like strong purpose, and I think it's awesome. So yeah, so I think, you know, your fear like, oh, what do I do when it's over? It's not over, it's just beginning. And that's cool. It's awesome.
All right, great questions. The last one here. How might the current team best serve the alumni and coaches? And then vice versa, how might the alumni coaches best serve the current team?
I need 2 new hamstrings. You guys would be willing to swap out. Fantastic. Mine are sore today.
I need a whole new body. This is something that you can give. 2 hamstrings, the guy's still young. I need a whole new body.
I think you guys should focus on, I think you're doing a great job, Britt. This is a good first step of trying to, I don't want to say the word rebuild, but pull people back in. I mean, I know, Jesse, your class came back and really supported the team that summer. And you graduate out of the program, as long as you can still compete, come back in the summer and work with the team in the preseason. That's super helpful. And that builds like a legacy of these guys getting to know you, even though you've been graduated for 2 years right now, right? Same thing with Caleb and his class, come back in the summer and work out with the team. And I think the alumni coming back to support what you're doing and coming to matches and even getting to know the guys a little bit through, you know, gatherings like this is great.
I would just affirm that. I remember it was the second year I coached. It was during the district semifinal. Like during a halftime, we had our team meeting. We talked strategy, ready to go back to the second half and try and battle back for a win. And it was 2 alum who were chatting with upperclassmen, you know, at the fence, just kind of like whether it was giving advice or just like being there for them and showing support. It was, yeah, they were off at college, but they were back on a break and they had taken time, or maybe they weren't. They'd come back to catch this game and demonstrate that the time that we spent together in high school, if you're not graduating on to something beyond that, the relationship mattered. And it mattered enough for that to continue. And they were still investing in you at that point. I really agree with Ben. That's the best thing you can do to give back to the program, is whether that's coming back to work out, coming to events like this, just demonstrating those players that you play with in younger classes that you care by showing up. 80% of success is showing up, and showing up is a big deal. Regardless of when you can do it, just making yourself available is good.
I would really say to value your time while you're a freshman, value your time in high school. Some of the relationships that I developed when I was in high school through sports. Rod was in my wedding, so was this guy behind me, and we're like best friends now from our time together playing sports and in high school together. So I just value that time. Don't take it for advantage. I know it's only 4 years, and like a lot of everyone's saying, those relationships continue on. Soccer is great. Playing all these sports in high school is great, but those relationships and why people enjoy being coaches is because they get to build those relationships. So you got 3 more years in high school for a lot of you. Just value it, and then moving on to college. Hold those relationships close, because at TCA, a lot of those relationships are lifelong relationships for sure. We have a bunch of us guys get together almost every month, grab wings together from going to high school together. So cherish that time that you have now and even beyond, because these are men. Ben and brothers and sisters in Christ forever.
All right, well, clap up to the coaches. Thank you very much. Alumni coaches, if you have ideas for the current team that we could do to